Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. So today's episode, we're going to encourage you to take a little different approach when you need to try to learn something new or acquire some new knowledge, new skills. Not an uncommon position for us to be in, whether it's our personal life, whether it's our professional life. I think most of us are always looking for ways to improve things, way to improve our situations. We're not quite sure what approach we should take. So we're going to talk about that today. And the approach we're suggesting comes from a quote that I read over the weekend. We teach best what we most need to learn. And so, what the quote is in essence saying is if you need to learn something and you really are struggling or you're trying to figure out how to go about it, take the approach that you need to learn it well enough that you could teach it to somebody else. By doing that, it's going to really force you to ask yourself questions. Could I explain this to somebody? Does it make sense to me? Do I really understand the fundamental issues that I'm trying to wrap my mind around and that I need to comprehend to solve this problem, make the situation better, whatever the case may be? So, that quote actually made me think of a couple other quotes that I thought were germane to the topic and along a similar thought process. So the first quote is from Seneca, who was a Roman philosopher. And he said, while we teach, we learn. And I think that's a great way to think about it because when you are teaching something to someone else, you're also learning through that process. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've coached a lot of stuff after my playing career was over, and then I've trained a lot of people in professional settings. And my career has followed a very kind of diverse path. I've done a lot of different things. And a lot of that is because I was dumb enough to raise my hand when they said, hey, we need someone to do this. And I would say, yeah, I'll jump in and try to figure it out. And then the other part of that was I wasn't afraid of taking on a new challenge. So it was not uncommon for me to be pulled out of a role that I was in, that I had kind of stabilized and was working well, and thrown at a new business problem or a new issue that popped up in the business that needed a solution. And I was fortunate enough that people had the confidence in me, the people that I reported to or that were above me that made those decisions, that they had the confidence in me to kind of jump into the fray, figure out what was going on, and try to bring some order around whatever was the challenges were, and create solutions, long term solutions for those problems. And it's an approach I always took. I asked a lot of questions because generally I was thrown into a situation where most people knew more than I did. Um, Now, knowing more than someone else isn't the same as being able to kind of synthesize all of the information or situations around an issue and kind of cut to the core problem, the root cause of the problem, and develop solutions for the root cause of the problem. So I would submit that if you take the approach you have to teach it to someone else, it'll force you to really kind of burrow down deep into the problem and really come up with solutions that make sense. And wherever possible, you want the solution to be as simple as possible. And, that kind of makes me think of the third quote, which I've heard before, and it just popped back into my head when I read it. But Albert Einstein said, you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And I think it's a great way to think about it. If you can't boil it down to its basic fundamentals and explain it to someone so those fundamentals make sense to them, you really don't understand the problem well enough or the subject matter that you're trying to teach or learn. So I think it's a great way to think about it. And I learned tons when I was coaching. I can tell you, like the first time I ever coached anything as like the head coach, the person in charge of putting together the practice plans, teaching the players what they needed to learn, et cetera, et cetera. I coached like an 8-year-old baseball team. My oldest son played baseball, and he was on an 8-year-old baseball team. Well, heck, I went through college on a baseball scholarship and was talking to scouts about signing a deal, and that's a world I'm very familiar with. I know how those practices are supposed to run. So I set up my first my first practice for an 8-year-old baseball team, very similar to like a high level college. I played Division I college baseball, a high level college practice. It was one of the worst practices in the history of organized sports. It was terrible. Nobody knew what to do. I didn't do any prep work to get anyone ready for what was going on. I didn't explain it to my other coaches. I just expected everyone to know what I knew, and it was just miserable. But to my credit, after practice, I grabbed the three coaches that were helping me and I said, "Hey guys, how do you think that went?" And nobody said anything. And I said, "I think it was a fucking train wreck." And they were like, "Okay, we didn't want to say it." I said, "Yeah, I think you'd have to be an idiot not to know that practice was a train wreck." So I said, "I think the fundamentals that we're trying to teach are solid, but the way I set it up was brutal. It was terrible." Second, in a professional setting, I took over a group that it was me and an assistant, and we grew that to a 12-person team, and increased the sales volume of that piece of the business fivefold over a 3-year period. So it was going really well, but it was a very different department after we got to that point, and we needed to make some changes in structure to how things operated. We just were inefficient. We weren't operating really well. Well, so again, in my infinite wisdom, I wasn't doing any of the work. I was just overseeing things because I understood how things should work. And again, I'm good at kind of getting people to sing on the same sheet of music. But you think I would ask anyone for their opinion or to participate? No, nope. I knew everything. I just knew how it should work. So I put together, this master plan of how we were going to restructure the department. And everything was going to be great, and we did it. I think we were about 3 weeks in, and I realized, man, this is another train wreck. I have fucked this up 7 ways a Sunday. And so I pulled everybody into my office and said, "How do you guys think things are going?" And it just so happens that in that group, it was me and 11 women. I don't know how it happened. I was fortunate. It was a very good team. They were very sharp. And nobody wanted to say anything. And finally, the most vocal person spoke up, and she said, "This sucks." And I said, "Okay, good. We're on the same page. So I think we can all acknowledge that I screwed this up badly." And they all kind of laughed. And I said, "No, I get it. Like, I'm not, I want to be successful. I'm not trying to be right here. I'm trying to be successful. But if I gave you guys all of the parameters, here's the sales goals we have to meet, here's the budget we have to hit, here are the objectives that we're trying to push to increase the awareness in the company, whatever the case may be. If I gave you all that and you know how we do things, could you come up with a structure?" And they said, "Well, let's give it a shot." So I gave them all that. I gave them about a week, and they came back with a plan to which I changed nothing. I literally adopted their plan on site. The minute they presented, I said, "Great, let's give it a shot." Like, "Well, don't you want to talk about X, Y, or Z?" I said, "Nope, I don't." I said, "We'll put it in practice. We'll see how it works. And we're going to do, like, I don't know, a daily check-in until we feel good, and then a weekly check-in. And then things should flow if we figure it out." And sure as hell they did. And it's because we had people that really knew stuff, really and truly knew stuff, putting the plan together. And so that's, to me, that's what we're talking about here. Is if this is the same thing, if you're going into sell somebody something, if you're going into negotiate a situation with somebody, you need to really and truly understand the pieces and components of that so that you could explain it to a 6-year-old. And if you do that, I think you're going to put yourself in the position where you have the highest chance of success of getting something productive done in that negotiation, selling whatever you need to sell, winning people over to thinking the way you want them to think, et cetera, et cetera. So, why is that? What is it about the benefits of teaching skills and concepts to others? How does it help you get better, and how does it help you achieve the goals you're trying to achieve? So we're going to just tick off five subjects here that I think the teaching to others, learning something so you teach it to others, will help with. So the first one is it gives you just a deeper understanding. By understanding things, by being able to teach them, it helps you understand a subject and examine your own understanding of it. And you got to be honest with yourself and say, "You know what? I don't know that nearly as well as I think I should. I need to learn it better, because if someone asks me questions on it, I'm not sure I could answer those questions." So that's the first one. It just really gives you a deeper understanding. If you really think about it from a perspective that I have to teach this to somebody else, or I have to convince somebody else that I know this well enough that I can teach it to somebody else, it's going to put you in a great spot. Second is personal growth. Teaching can help you grow by inspiring and encouraging others. And it helps you move beyond your own fears, your self-doubt, your trepidation on any particular subject. So there's nothing better than really getting through to somebody and really watching it click and going, hey, I had some piece of that. I was coaching a team one time that had a kid he was a good athlete, but he was real just kind of standoffish, quiet, kept to himself. And he called me up one day. His parents called me up and said, hey, Darren wants to quit. And I said, well, Darren can't quit. Like we don't allow people to quit. So I get it. If Darren's unhappy, let's work through it and find out what the situation is. And so I had a meeting with him. I think he was like 10 years old at the time. He's a good kid. And I said, so Darren, why do you want to quit? What are your problems? He said, well, it was a baseball team. He said, well, I always bat ninth, and I don't feel like I'm a big part of the team. And I said, okay. I said, look, I do think you are a big part of the team. I think you could be a much bigger part of the team, but this is a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. You don't show up to practice on time sometimes. It doesn't seem like you take it all that serious. So if I can get your commitment for a week that you're going to show up to practice on time, you're going to bust your ass at practice, I'll bat you third in the lineup. And third is kind of the premier spot for hitters in the lineup. Batting third or fourth is like a big deal in baseball. So his eyes got big. He got a big smile on his face. Said, okay, I'll do it. I said, great. And so sure enough, he kept to his word. He was there on time. He worked hard at practice. And a week later, I put him in the third spot in our lineup. And he promptly went 3 for 4 with a couple of doubles, hit the ball really well. It was great. It was just great to see the impact you could have on a 10-year-old kid. But it was because we taught him how to approach it. We taught him to take it serious. We taught him to show that he cared. We taught him to work for the things that he wanted. And just watching that personal growth from him gave me a lot of personal growth, because I could have lost a kid at 10 years old. He flames out and who knows where it leads. Maybe he goes down a rabbit hole and he gets depressed and falls in with the wrong crowd, or gets into bad activities because he's not participating in something positive like athletics. And it was just great. So that's my own, it's just one story I can share on what teaching others, how it can benefit you personally and give you personal growth. And along those same lines, the next bullet point is around relationships. It really helps you develop relationships. By teaching others, you spend a lot of time with them. It shows you care about them. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel validated, and it grows that relationship. It creates what I call sticky relationships. So when you think about relationships, a lot of them are just transactional. Hey, buddy. Hey, pal. Hey, Mr. Brown Shoes. How's the weather? How about the sports team X? There's nothing wrong with that, but those are superficial relationships. When you get involved in teaching stuff to people, you tend to develop much stronger and deeper relationships with them. And that's really beneficial, because you've heard us talk about it on the podcast here before. In our opinion, and I know I'm right about this, life is about relationships and experiences. Personal wealth is great. Possessions are great, but they're not what fulfill people. No one on their deathbed says, I wish I would have bought that Porsche. They always talk about wishing they'd spent more time with family, wishing they'd taken their career less seriously, wishing that they regret the things they didn't do way more than the things that they did do. And developing relationships with people will get you to open up to them, get them to open up to you, and you can form a much more cohesive bond with people when you do those things. And then fourth, it really helps your reputation, because if you've got a bunch of people saying, so and so really helped me out, they helped me learn something new. It's just so valuable for people to know that there's a resource out there in you, and you'll be surprised how many other things, not necessarily even related to the thing you taught a person, will open up for you in that relationship, or with people they know. Someone comes to them and says, hey, I got a problem. And they say, you know what? I had a problem and I went to Joe with it. And he really helped me learn X, Y, and Z. And it made an impact on how I approached it and how things went for me. So it's great for your reputation. It lets people know that you're intelligent enough to kind of drill down into subjects, drill down into the weeds, and really bring some order around chaos in some situations. And it lets them know that you care. It lets them know that you're willing to give them time and listen to them. And that's what most people want. They want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. And if you teach stuff to people, you'll get that reputation. And it's very, very powerful. And then the last one is learning faster. Teaching can help you learn faster. And when you go into things and say, hey, I got to figure out how to teach this to someone else. I'm going to work my process. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to try to understand at its core what is the fundamental challenge, issue, problem that we're trying to solve here, or the question that we're trying to answer. And by doing that, you're going to learn those things so much faster. And again, from a professional standpoint, I spent a lot of time doing that because I did switch in verticals. You know, I was in procurement for a while, and then I was in supply chain for a while, and then I was in operations for a while, quite a bit of finance. And so it's odd for most people. Most people are in the vertical, and you're a salesperson, then you're a district manager, then you're a director, et cetera, et cetera. I hopped around a lot, and I found it valuable because I got to kind of learn the businesses that I was in holistically. I got to really understand how our business functioned and operated, and it made me a better problem solver, and it made me able to pick up on things faster when I was thrown into situations where I had to learn to solve those problems, or when I was responsible for solving those problems. So, yeah, those are all 5 things that I think you'll get a great benefit of if you figure out taking the approach that trying to learn something so well you can teach it to someone else is a great approach. So, yep, that's our episode for today, guys. I hope you found it valuable. It's been an approach that's worked well for me. It applies in a lot of different settings, personal, professional, and I really would encourage you to think about it the next time you've got to kind of dig into something. Take the approach that you have to teach it to someone else. I think you'll be surprised at how valuable that experience is and how much you get out of the process by which you go about learning that subject, so you can teach it to somebody else. So thanks again for joining us, guys. Don't forget to visit our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our content is on there. All of our podcast episodes are on there. You can sign up for our newsletter on there. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. So thanks again for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time. Everybody have a great week.